My 12-year-old blind son staggered home crying. His face was pale, his lips trembled, and when he spoke, his voice cracked like glass. He told me what the HOA president, Karen, had just done. She had mocked his blindness, cornered him in the clubhouse bathroom, and forced him to sip water straight from the toilet. For a moment, time stopped. My ears rang, my vision blurred, and my chest tightened with a rage I didn't know was possible. She thought she could humiliate my son and walk away. She didn't know me. She didn't know the lengths a mother would go to for her child. I didn't scream at her in the street. I didn't pound on her door. I dragged her into court and made sure she lost everything. If you've ever dreamed of watching karma catch up to someone who thought they were untouchable, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and settle in. Because this is one of the most infuriating and most satisfying revenge stories you'll ever hear. When I first moved into that neighborhood, I had such high hopes. For years, it had just been me and my son, Ethan. Life wasn't easy, but we'd carved out a rhythm. Ethan had been blind since birth, and raising him alone meant I was constantly fighting. Fighting for accessibility, fighting for understanding, fighting for just a little compassion from a world that often looked the other way. But Ethan never let his blindness define him. At 12, he was witty, stubborn, and brilliant in ways that made me proud every single day. He could memorize voices after a single introduction. He cracked jokes that had me doubled over. He walked with confidence, his guide dog Max by his side, and refused to let pity cage him. When I bought the little blue house on Willow Lane, I thought I was giving him a fresh start. A quiet, suburban community with tree-lined sidewalks and neatly trimmed hedges. A place where he could walk safely with Max. A place where people waved at each other. A place where I could finally breathe. But that illusion shattered the day I met Karen. She was the HOA president. Late 50s. Perfectly ironed blouse. A sharp blonde bob haircut that looked like it could slice through steel. She never left home without a clipboard clutched like a weapon, and her mouth wore a permanent scowl. She didn't greet us with kindness. She didn't welcome us to the neighborhood. The very first words she ever said to me were, "Your trash bins are an inch too close to the curb. That's a violation." I laughed nervously at first, thinking maybe she was joking. She wasn't. That was just Karen. From then on, she made us her target. Warning notices appeared on my door weekly. One time it was the color of my mailbox being too dull. Another time it was my lawn being a half-inch too long. She even claimed Max, Ethan's guide dog, wasn't allowed under HOA pet rules. I tried to explain, tried to reason with her, but her lips curled like she smelled something foul. Her cruelty wasn't just on paper. She muttered insults under her breath when we passed. At HOA meetings, she joked that some kids were just more trouble than they were worth. She said it loud enough for Ethan to hear. I saw it land on him like a stone. His shoulders would stiffen. His smile faded. My son, who usually lit up any room, grew quieter, and Karen fed on it. At first, I told myself to ignore her. I told myself she was just bitter, that it wasn't worth the fight. But then came the day that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. Ethan had gone to the clubhouse to fill his water bottle after school. When he came home, his face was red, his hands shook, and he clutched Max's harness like it was his lifeline. "Mom," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I rushed to him. "Ethan, what happened? Are you hurt?" His lips quivered. Tears spilled down his cheeks. She made me drink. From the toilet." I froze. "What?" "Karen," he stammered. "She found me in the clubhouse bathroom. She said I was useless. She said blind kids don't belong here. Then she told me to drink from the toilet or she'd call the police on us. I didn't know what to do, Mom. I was scared, so His words broke into sobs. I dropped to my knees, holding his trembling body against me. I stroked his hair, kissed the top of his head, and felt something inside me harden like stone. My hands shook, but not from fear. From rage. Pure, Cold, blinding rage. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Every muscle in my body screamed to march down the street and tear Karen apart, but a deeper voice inside me spoke louder. Don't scream. Don't fight her on her terms. Destroy her on yours. That night I sat at the kitchen table long after Ethan had fallen asleep. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I stared at a blank notebook and began writing. Dates, incidents, quotes, every single thing Karen had ever said or done. Every notice she'd taped to my door. Every insult. I went to the garage and dug out the shoebox where I kept her letters. I printed her nasty emails. I saved her voicemails, her sneering threats. Then I installed cameras on my property, not just for security, for evidence. I spoke to neighbors. Some hesitated, afraid of crossing her, but a few brave ones admitted they'd seen her berating Ethan. One neighbor, an older gentleman named Mr. Franklin, told me he'd overheard Karen call Ethan a liability. He looked ashamed as he admitted it. I should have said something, he whispered. I didn't know it was this bad. Piece by piece, I built a case. I researched ADA laws until my eyes burned. I pored over HOA bylaws. I talked to lawyers. What Karen had done wasn't just cruel, it was illegal. Harassment, discrimination, emotional abuse. And with Ethan being disabled, the courts took these cases seriously. Karen had no idea the storm I was preparing. She strutted around the neighborhood like a queen, her heels clicking on the pavement, her nose tilted high. She still left her little warning slips on my door, as if she was in control. She had no clue her empire was about to burn. When I finally filed the lawsuit, I felt a surge of relief. It wasn't over yet, but the first shot had been fired. The day of the court hearing arrived. My palms were sweaty, my stomach twisted, but Ethan held my hand. "We'll be okay, Mom," he said softly. He was stronger than he realized. Karen arrived in a cloud of perfume, her lips painted a shade of smug red. She had 2 HOA board members trailing behind her like loyal puppies. She smirked at me across the courtroom as if to say, "You'll regret this." But the moment Ethan took the stand, everything shifted. He sat there, small in that big wooden chair, his hands folded tightly in his lap. His voice was quiet at first, but steady. He told the judge how Karen cornered him, how she mocked his blindness, how she forced him to drink from the toilet. You could hear a pin drop in that room. His words were simple, honest, and devastating. Karen shifted in her seat, her smug mask cracking. Her lawyer fumbled with papers. The judge's eyes narrowed. Then came the evidence. Emails where she called Ethan a nuisance. Voicemails dripping with venom. Neighbors who testified to her cruelty. Surveillance footage that caught her screaming on my lawn. Each piece was a nail in her coffin. The gavel slammed down. The judge's voice rang clear, guilty of harassment, guilty of ADA violations, guilty of emotional abuse. Karen was stripped of her HOA presidency. She was fined thousands of dollars, ordered to pay damages. Her reputation shattered. I'll never forget her face. The flush drained from her cheeks. Her mouth opened and closed, searching for words that wouldn't come. She looked around the courtroom, desperate for someone to save her. But no one moved. Her entourage avoided her eyes. She was alone. And for the first time, she knew what it felt like to be powerless. As we walked out of the courtroom, Ethan squeezed my hand. "We won, Mom," he said, a small smile spreading across his face, and in that moment, I saw the boy I knew again. Strong, brave, unbreakable. Justice doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't erase the cruelty he endured. But it gave him something he desperately needed. The knowledge that his voice mattered. That no one, not even a self-righteous HOA tyrant, could strip him of his dignity. Justice isn't always quick, but when it lands hard. Karen learned that cruelty has consequences. And Ethan walked out of that courtroom taller, stronger, knowing he was never alone in his fight. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button, drop a comment about the most satisfying justice you've ever seen, and of course, subscribe for more stories that prove karma never misses.